You're listening to the Daily Mishnah Podcast with Benedict.
We're very close to the end of Bava Batra, and we're dealing with a range of issues. Maybe we could even say a miscellany of issues. Some of them relate to documents, and we've already said that the 10th chapter, the final chapter of Bava Batra, does relate to documents. But the first two seem to be linked only by the fact that they begin with the word shnei or shnaim for two. In other words, they're linked by the number two. So we're in the 7th Mishnah. It has a whole range of issues. By the way, in the Kaufman manuscript, this Mishnah itself is split up into about 5 different Mishnayot. And we might not make it through in one session. In fact, even though it's only one Mishnah, it's very, very diverse. But the first two issues are linked by the number 2. So there's 2 brothers. This is the first issue. 2 brothers, one poor and one rich. Really, it's a situation that resonates today. One poor and one rich. And their father left them. They inherited from their father a bathhouse, merchatz, and or an olive press, uvet habad, and a beit habad. So what are they going to do? Because it's a major capital piece, and of course it can't be split into 2. And we've already learned in the previous Mishnayot that if it's too large to be split into 2, it's not like a field, which you can just divide into 2, or a large house you can divide into 2. Either, the bathhouse and an olive press, they're units. So they can't divide it up. How are they going to deal with this? And of course, by the way, one of them, the halacha, which we learned previously, and we've brought this in the Bar Tanura, just at the bottom of the source sheet, that the poor one cannot buy out the rich one because the poor one doesn't have any money. So usually in this situation, if one wanted to get out, he would buy out his brother, but he can't. The poor one can't buy out his brother. But let's carry on in the Mishnah. Asa'an l'sachar. If the father made them for hire, if the bathhouse and the olive press are out for hire, asa'an la'emtza, he's actually made them, the profit is split equally. That's an easy situation. If they're hired out, then the 2 brothers can split the profit. There's no problem. Asa'an la'atzmo. But if he made them for himself, i.e. just for use, well, then they really can't be split. So this rich guy could say to the poor guy, buy yourself slaves, and then they can wash in the bathhouse. It's not quite clear from the text of the Mishnah whether the slaves are going to wash in the bathhouse or whether the slaves are going to warm up the bathhouse so everyone else is going to wash in it. But of course, the poor guy doesn't have any money to buy slaves. And similarly, the rich guy could say, buy yourselves olives and press them in the olive press. But we don't have any way, he doesn't have any money to buy olives. So the poor guy is stuck. And the Mishnah doesn't resolve it. It's as if there's no way around this problem if the poor man doesn't somehow raise the funds to buy out the rich guy. So that's the first issue, which revolves around the number 2. And then the Mishnah goes on. Shnaim shehayu va'ir. There were 2 people in the same town. V'shem echad Yosef ben Shimon. And one of them was called Yosef ben Shimon. V'shem echad Yosei ben Shimon. And the other one's name was Yosei ben Shimon. In other words, almost the same, but not quite. Neither one of them can actually issue a debt document on the other because they're too easy to confuse. We don't know. Obviously, the lender is holding the document, but after the debt's been repaid, the borrower will hold it. Maybe the borrower then can reinforce on the lender. It's a situation with infinite possibilities for error. So they cannot. Neither one can issue a debt document to the other. And nobody else, by the way, can issue a debt document in their name, i.e., it feels, by the way, as if these people won't be able to obtain finance because no one is going to be prepared to lend to them. And similarly, and if someone finds among his documents, so someone finds a document in his library, Shtaro shel Yosef ben Shimon Parua, he finds in his library a document that says the document of Yosef ben Shimon is paid, i.e., the document, i.e., his debt has been repaid. His debt has been repaid. Shtarot kulam pru'in. Both their documents are paid. In other words, if we can't identify, if we can't identify the person to whom this receipt belongs, then essentially we're going to nullify both. We're going to nullify both debts. So what are we going to do? Keitzad yasu. How are we going to actually operate in practice when two people have the same name? Yashlishu. We're going to triple it. And we've seen this word yashlishu before in the previous Mishnah, where it refers to bringing in a third party. When a debt is partially repaid, maybe the document should be handed over to a third party to monitor ongoing debt service. And we're going to say again, yashlishu, bring in a third party. But here it seems as if we're going to write the name to the third generation. So in other words, it will be Yosef ben Shimon ben, I don't know, ben Yaakov. We'd have three generations. And what if the three generations' names were the same? Im hayu mushulashim. If they were the same names unto three generations. And we see this actually in the United States too. So you might have, Frank, you might have John Smith the first and John Smith the second and John Smith the third and so on. And there are these people that call everybody in their family John. So what are we going to do? Im hayu mushulashim, if they all had the same third generation name, yichtov siman. Why don't they write a note? So, for example, this will be the tall one, or the red-haired one, or the one with a funny nose. So you write some qualifying characteristic against their name to identify them. Now, what if they were the same symbol? Im hayu simanim. If they were symbols, i.e., if their symbols were the same. And here, the Kaufman manuscript, and maybe we'll close here. Here, the Kaufman's manuscript says yichtov bahen. They should write in them. Bahen. And we're not quite clear what this means. Maybe it means they should write some additional information in them, perhaps. But interesting that most other editions of the Mishnah have yichtov kohen. They change the bet in bahen to a chaf. So they change bahen to kohen. They should write in them kohen. In other words, if one of them is a kohen and the other one isn't, then that's one of the distinguishing marks which they should write in the debt document. And of course, it's fascinating that as we are discussing possible ambiguity in documents relating to loans and borrowings, interesting that we've come across an ambiguity in the text of the Mishnah. Was the correct reading Bahen, Bet Hey Nun, or was the correct reading Kohen, Huff Hey Nun? And we don't know. We don't know, but this should serve as a warning to anyone who believes in, if you like, the fundamentalism or the literalism of Mishnah and of Gemara, that honestly, we're never 100% certain what the correct reading is, what the correct girsa is. And anyone who thinks that they can take the writing in the Mishnah or the Talmud literally on the basis that every letter is correct is probably making a mistake.
Thank you for listening to this edition of the Daily Mishnah Podcast with Benedict.